Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to my Dune Awakening content. So today, folks, we had a really awesome thing go down. We had the official Dune Awakening Reddit AMA, which stands for Ask Me Anything, in case you didn't know, with the Funcom development team, and they started this thread this morning, and they started, well, actually they opened up the question part of the thread a few days ago and allowed people to start to get their questions in so that they could go through and answer them whenever they started the AMA. And then this morning they officially opened up the AMA and they started answering questions. And you can see here there were thousands of posts with people asking all different sorts of questions. But the ones I want to focus on are the ones that the developers actually answered, because we got a lot of good feedback from this event and we learned a lot of cool things about it as well. And I want to make sure that we talk about those and we look at the things that they had to say. So let's go through and let's find some developer answers to some of these questions and let's see what they had to say. So as I'm scrolling on down, I'm looking for the questions that the developers actually answered. And as you can see, it's a long one, folks. There is a ton of questions being asked and a ton of discussion, which is a good thing because that shows the activity and the love and the passion for this project from the community. The first question that I see a dev response to is, if this game breaks any cool records, will Joel do a shoey on a Twitch stream? Yes, but with Coke Zero, since he's dry right now, from Funcom Scott. So that was just kind of a funny little thing. That wasn't actually any good game information, but here's where we start to actually get into the good game information. This one right here was a good one. It says, after the rush of new players and servers stabilize, will it be possible to transfer a character permanently to another Haga Basin within the same world? I would assume it would need to be accepted that everything that character has is forfeited, but the skills and experience of the character would transfer over. This would help players move to lower population servers and join friends. So Funcom Scott had this to say about it. He said, not on launch day, but we will add this functionality after launch. So that was really cool to see, because leading up until this point, we weren't for sure if we would ever be able to have server transfers like this at all, because the mindset that we had seen from the community before was that they weren't going to allow this. But now they've said they will after launch at some point. So that's really good to see, because with the servers going to be as full and congested as they are at the start, you may accidentally get on a server that you wish you hadn't have. It could be way too popular and you could never get on, or it could be dead and you wish you would have chose a different one. It could go either way. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast on how these kind of things work on launch days especially. So having the ability to be able to transfer a server later is really good news. He also went on to say that during the beta this weekend, you will be able to use the visit feature to go to another Haga Basin or server, now as they're explaining them, on your world. The only restriction you will have when you're on a different Haga Basin is that you cannot place a land claim, but you can do everything else. The next version of this feature, which will happen either at launch or soon after, is being able to visit from the server browser instead of in-game. So that's cool, because that means that when you're not actually logged in, you'll be able to pick a server that you want to visit where your friends are at if you know which one it is. So that's pretty cool. Before, they've showed us that you actually have to like click on the player and select travel, or click on their name in your friends list and select travel to server or something like that, and you pop into the public spaces where you meet up with your friends on their server. But now they're saying it eventually will have the ability to do it from the server browser. The final version, which will happen post-launch, is that we will allow you to move to a new Haga Basin within your own world. And then he specifically specifies we will not have this working at launch, because obviously there's going to be a lot more other priorities that they have to get sorted out at launch, you know, as far as just making sure the game runs and getting the servers sorted and, you know, making sure the population spreads out like it needs to be worrying about that. So I get that, and I fully understand why they wouldn't want to have that available at launch. That's a smart move. Do it later, after everything settles down and people decide that, man, I wished I would have joined this one instead of this one. Give them that ability later. Let the servers, you know, settle down and shake out the first few weeks after release, and then worry about that. Now, I don't know what the timeline is on their thinking, but they said they will not have it working at launch, but will come later. So that was really cool for the first question that they answered, and I thought that was a very nice one for the community to be able to see. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I probably, as I was looking at the next question, which was really good, I was thinking to myself, man, I really need to be giving these original posters some shout outs for some of these questions because they're really good. This one right here was the one we just looked at. Agitated 1959 was the one that asked that question about being able to transfer to a new Haga Basin. So good one. And then the next one we've got here was from a guy named Ghost, or person named Ghost. Question: the Frim kit is only visible during the very start of the game. Can we have the option to show the backpack or the Frim kit during or throughout gameplay to look realistic like an actual survivor in the desert? Don't want to pull tools and weapons out of my magic pockets. Then Funcom Joel said, sadly no. Character team told us that backpacks or cloaks, pick one. So we chose cloaks, though we have backpacks for specific outfits, as you have seen. Your last weapon, except giant heavy weapons or tools, or tool used, will always be visible on your back or your hip when holstered. So that was kind of interesting, something I had never thought about before, but because this person asked that question, we got to see the answer to that. The next one comes, and then buckle up, folks. There's a lot of them. So, and I want to make sure I cover a lot of these. I may miss some, but I'm going to try to cover as many of them as I can because I thought this was super interesting. There was a lot of good information in this AMA. I'm really surprised that there was so much good information in this because the ones I've seen in the past from other companies and stuff never were really this revealing. But there's still so many things we need to know about this game that if you're not privy to the testing phase, you just don't know. Like me, I'm not a tester, so I didn't know a lot of this stuff. So this was very good information, albeit it's a few weeks away from release. So yeah, we should start hearing this stuff. So if we're not, there's a problem. But anyway, Sir Villicus asked a very good question, and it's pretty detailed. But let's look at it all because the answer was highly detailed, and I want to make sure we see all this because this is an important question. How might a guild set up a base for their members to use in Haga Basin when a guild consists of members who may be across multiple Haga Basins? As a guild leader, this is something that I constantly daydream on. How am I going to do this? From what I understand, a player uses their own personal subfief to assign permissions for guild access to build and manage a land claim for use as a guild base. But if the owner of that claim is not online, how might a guild member whose home Haga is different get access to the guild base? Do they have to wait for another guild member to be online to send them an invite in order to change to the correct Haga Basin? Or does this mean it is in your best interest to make sure that all members exist on the same Haga Basin? How do you handle this if a server is too full for members to join as their home server? I know it's possible to build bases temporary in the deep desert, but that might not be of interest to every guild to have to do that every single week. Funcom Joel again. He's Johnny on the spot, man, answered a bunch of questions. Many questions wrapped into one. I'll try to answer them clearly. The owner sets up permissions. So if they won't be online, I would suggest assigning co-ownership permissions and allow someone else to set permissions as well. It doesn't work differently to most MMO guild systems in that sense. Okay, based on previous experience from other MMOs, we get that. It is up to you if you want to try to have your entire guild in a single Haga Basin map. The advantage is obviously that there is no requirement for other guild members to be online to use the visiting system to get there. If you expect the entire guild to be online at the same time, every time, you do run the risk of hitting the cap. This is also why the guild size is restricted to 32 people, which I've always suspiciously realized was below the current user for the Haga Basin, and that's exactly why right there. It would make no sense to have a guild limit of 50 people with a concurrent user on one Haga Basin of 40, so you get it now. There's an activity, or at least that's how I think it kind of feels. There's an activity cap for, but not a restriction on, created characters. So you just have to ensure guild members create characters on the same world and use the visiting system. So the world layer, not the Haga Basin, is what they're talking about there. So that was a really interesting one. And thank you for asking that question, sir. So we got that answer. The next one, will we be able, from Adept Ad 7874, will we be able to transmog armor, and can we hide helmet and cape? Funcom Joel says, the game features an extensive transmog system, which will make a lot of people happy, where you can alter visuals pretty much on the fly. Some of the restrictions, you can only switch out armors of a specific type with another type, like heavy, heavy, light to light, steel suit to steel suit. Examples. There are some exceptions to this rule, like social visuals. You can hide helmets and turn off or on the eyes of Ibad, but you cannot hide cloaks. So that was pretty interesting. So we had answer from a different Funcom person next. Nascent1 said, any chance of limiting the numbers of weapons on the hotbar? It's going to throw off PvP balance if people have 8 shotguns or sniper rifles so they can just fire endlessly without reloading. I think 1 to 2 big guns, 1 sidearm, 1 melee weapon would be great. Then slots 5 to 8 could only be for tools, food, med kits, etc. A lot of other games have used that kind of model and it works well. Funcom Villar says, at launch you will be able to place 8 weapons on the hotbar. We are considering improvements and changes after launch. So this is obviously something that I feel that they're going to have to see how it performs before they make a decision on that one. Is kind of how I'm feeling about his answer there. So 8 weapons on the hotbar though, and they're considering changes. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Chaos Realm 69 asked, will it be possible for the introduction of snap to grid for placement of placeables inside our bases for those who are OCD about those things being in place? And then Funcom Villar says, this will not be done for launch. It is something we are considering post-launch, and I can understand this person wanting this, but I'm one of those people that don't want it because I want freeform placement, because I've built in so many, and I'm not saying this guy hasn't, but I'm just saying I have built in so many games for the last forever, 3 decades, and I know how I feel about having to snap to grid versus being able to place where I want. I want the ability to place where I want because I have to do crazy builds all the time, and just being able to scooch it over just one more hair can sometimes be the difference on me being happy or not, you know. So I don't really like this idea. I mean, if it's there, great, but also give me the ability to turn it off so that I can then place by hand. That would be a lot more to my liking. Give me both. If you're going to have one, give me both. That's what I say about it. Okay, so then this one, Verted. He had a big question here, but Funcom Scott did go into detail on the answer, so let's look at it all. Hi, dev team. Regarding the server architecture, particularly the instanced Haga Basin sieges with their relatively low concurrent player caps, mentioned potentially as 40 to 100, many in the community are concerned that this could create significant queues, specifically to access our home instance where our base is located, especially during peak hours. While different from New World's global server queues, this home instance bottleneck feels like it could lead to similar frustrations of being unable to access core gameplay. I feel you, bro. I asked this same question in a video and got dumped on by Joel for asking that, so I get it. Could you elaborate on, number one, the specific mechanics and expected player experience of the queue system for full Haga Basin? Number two, what backup plans or dynamic scaling possibilities exist specifically for Haga Basin instances, not just social hubs? If persistent peak time queues become a major issue, are player caps flexible post-launch based on performance or demand? Number three, how does the system handle scenarios where a player wants to log in to join friends in the deep desert or social hub, but their home Haga Basin is currently full and queued? Can they bypass their home instance queue to play elsewhere temporarily? And number four, what gives the team confidence that this specific aspect won't significantly hinder player experience at launch and beyond? So that was a lot of questions there. And Funcom Scott did actually go into some detail with this, so let's look at it. Funcom Scott said we have a few systems in place to keep queues to a manageable level during the launch surge. During the launch period, there may be certain worlds or servers that are overpopulated, but we will do our best to make sure the community is spread out as evenly as we can, and I think that's honestly about the best they can do for that situation, because launch is going to be a mess. As for how queues work, if you create a character on full server, and then after character creation and the new player experience, you will be in a queue. You will need to wait until enough people leave before you can return. We do have grace periods when exiting a server and reserve a spot for you so you can bypass the queue when you return. So I don't really understand that part of his answer. We do have grace periods when exiting a server and reserve a spot for you so you can bypass the queue when you return. Okay, so I think that means when you travel to visit someone else, you can reserve a spot for you to return. I don't know. That one's kind of confusing. I'm not really sure how to take that one, so I'm going to leave it alone, because I don't want to put words in Funcom Scott's mouth if that's not what he meant from what I'm thinking. So I'm not gonna touch that one anymore. For dynamic scaling, we can adjust the peak concurrent players on a server, and we will be testing some worlds in the beta this weekend with higher caps to see what the maximum amount we can go to with a good player experience, which means things like buildable space, population density, server performance, etc. So that's good to see them say that they're actually going to be testing some worlds with higher caps in the beta. I applaud that, because I really want to see them raise that concurrent user limit. I think 40 is just too restrictive in my personal opinion, but whatever. I answered this one in a question above, but we want to introduce a feature where you can log into a different server from the server browser if your home server is full. That will definitely help. As for confidence, we are planning to launch with a lot of server capacity and will direct players to worlds and servers with room for them. If you are dead set on playing on an incredibly busy world, then you will have queues, but there will be room for you to play somewhere else. See, that right there, I'm not liking the sound of that, because I want to have my friends on the same Haga Basin as me. And it sounds like they're going to direct us other places and force us to not be able to try to join the same Haga Basin. I get it that they have to shift populations around to make things usable, but if players are intent on being physically together on the same one, you should let them. But it doesn't sound like they're going to be. If you are dead set on playing on an incredibly busy world, then you will have queues, but there will be room for you to play somewhere else. Okay, I don't know how to take that, really. I'm just going to leave it alone, I guess. Darth Necromancy said, can we have a Landsrod condition that fully disables PvP for the week? Interesting idea, no current plans, but something to consider, Villar said. I think that that's actually a brilliant idea. Give the PvE people the chance to have a week that they can play in the deep desert without fear of PvP. That sounds amazing, and I really hope they take that into consideration, because of course the PvP players are going to be happy with having PvP in the deep desert. It's their thing, it's their area, that's what it's all built around, we get it. But the PvE players could have the run of the deep desert for a week. That would be hilarious, and it would actually be pretty cool. And this guy chimes in and says, epic idea. I think you're feeling what I'm feeling on that one. That was a good one. Interesting idea, no current plans, but something to consider. I'm going to vote that one because I think that's pretty cool. Actually, I think that's a pretty good idea. Okay, so Jingerston Terran. When you use the visit a friend function, will you be able to take a vehicle with you? Bring loot inside this vehicle back to your own server? If you can only carry your backpack loot, that will heavily restrict the point of visiting a friend for some good times together if you have to port back and forth to bring back your loot. I've asked this question before, and I asked it in the official Discord on one of the question threads and actually got an answer. I can't remember who was it that answered me or what exactly they said, but at the time they did say yes, you will be able to take your loot that you've earned back with you, because I posed the question, what's the point of going to visit friends on a different Haga Basin and do content with them if you can't then bring back the loot you earned in that content? And they said no, you can, because that was, you know, kind of what I was asking. And this is basically the same thing with that, but he's asking about taking a vehicle too. And Funcom Camille said, that's the first time I've seen him on there, but that's cool that they've got multiple people answering questions. When visiting a friend, you can bring your sand bike with you that is stored in the vehicle backup tool. However, since you cannot store vehicles that have loot stored in their inventory, you can effectively only bring back whatever is in your character's inventory. So that was something that we kind of knew already too, that if you have inventory in the storage compartment on your sand bike, you have to empty that inventory space before you can store it on the vehicle backup tool. And then once it's on the vehicle backup tool, it's basically an item like every other piece of loot that's in your inventory, and you can transfer with it, yes. And then you can throw it down or whatever by using the vehicle backup tool, just like you would on your own server. So yeah, good question. Good question. The next one. I'm not a content creator, so how do I, a normal human being, get a free t-shirt out of this? Okay. Funcom Camille says, I ask myself the same thing every day. Okay, that was a funny little thing here. Ellen Zero says, I see bases incur a tax cost. Can a solo player earn enough to pay for those huge bases as seen in the recent live stream, or would this be unaffordable? That's a very good question, and that's a very legitimate question, because some of those bases that we've seen in the recent building live stream were amazing, and they were huge. And if you saw my building deep dive nerd out session video, you saw me talking about verticality and the amazing horizontal base footprint that you can have and the amazing verticality that you can have. And I was wondering about tax costs too. And he says, Funcom Joel says, you will be able to build big bases as a solo player. And he didn't really say in specific anything about the tax costs, which is what this guy was asking. But he's saying you can build them. So I guess that means you can do it, but can you keep up with the upkeep? I don't know. He didn't really specify. So that was kind of a unanswered thing right there, but you can do it, but we kind of already got that, so yeah. Insurgent said, what happens if a layer, which I think he is meaning a Haga Basin, I'm not sure, if a layer has 20 people allocated, 200 people allocated to it, but 180 of them now don't ever log in and play. Does that mean that layer becomes a quiet den of just 20 people doomed to not have people join, or have you got plans to merge layers? So that's actually a very good question, because as games release, everything is crazy, and then a few weeks into that, a lot of times a lot of people will move on, think, this ain't for me, change games, leave, all that, go inactive. So that's a very good, legitimate question. And Funcom Scott said, we limit based on concurrency, and that means the amount of people currently on the server, and activity, the amount of people that have recently played on the server. There isn't a character cap, so if someone stops playing, they won't count towards space on the server. So that's kind of interesting on how he answered that. Then he went on to say, if 100, and because this guy says, what if there's 200 people allocated but 180 don't log in? And then he went on to kind of specify, if 180 people don't log in, then other people can log in. I'm not sure where this 200 number comes from. And that was kind of my question as well. Where did that 200 number come from? I think a lot of people were confused in thinking that a Haga Basin has a max population allowed as 200 people per server, but that only 40 can be concurrent users at a time. But I've never heard them specifically say that, so I don't know. I think that just came from something somebody saw a while back and they've just latched onto it as gospel, but I don't think that's the case. The next question was from Throwaway77. In the last Dune Awakening live stream, it was mentioned that there is a small strip of land in the deep desert that is non-PvP. How big is this non-PvP area in the deep desert? So that's something we've been knowing about for a long time. We knew that there was a safe spot at the very beginning of the deep desert, to where the reason why they designed that was so that you could log into the deep desert and go into the deep desert without getting immediately ganked when you stepped a toe into the deep desert. That was what the whole purpose of that strip of non-PvP area right before entry in the deep desert is. And they have also told us in the past that you can build bases in there, but that it's going to be wiped every week just like everything else in the deep desert. So it's not going to be a safe zone where you can snatch up a piece of land and build a PvE base and keep it forever. That's not going to be a thing. People are probably going to line up their bases there for logistics reasons of transferring loot back and forth out of the deep desert, but it's going to wipe once a week just like the deep desert does. Funcom Joel says it is roughly 10% of the deep desert. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that I'm really surprised at this answer, honestly, because the deep desert has been likened to the size of New York City if you were to try to compare it to something in real life. One of them made that comparison in one of the live streams from the past. They said, yeah, I just think on the order of New York City is about how big the deep desert would be in real life. That's huge. And 10% of that is a big space. So I think this safe strip is going to be a lot bigger than people are really grasping at this point. I think once we finally see the size of the deep desert and we see the size of this safe strip, we're going to be surprised. So I like the sound of that. I'm going to thumbs up. I'm going to upvote that. Here we go with Agitated 1959 again. He got another question in. Got another one answered. Good job. He's saying, regarding selling base blueprints. Oh boy, here's a question I love because I'm into this mechanic. What prevents others from buying your blueprint, building the base, then selling the same blueprint repeatedly? Is there any sort of copyright protection on the original design? Without something in place, maybe an added tax or fee for leveraging someone else's blueprint, or a minimum percent of the building having to be unique in order to make a blueprint, the base building role and market would be diluted by players looking for easy money through stealing other players' designs. And I'm just going to tell you that I had not thought of this. And I have been somebody that is a massive builder in all survival games that I've played. I played Ark Survival Evolved for the last almost 10 years. And I have been a supreme builder in that game. And I'm ashamed of myself for not thinking about this, because I should have thought about this as well. And this is a very good question. I'm excited to see how Funcom Joel answers this. He says, currently, there is no protection that prevents the scenario you describe. It is a difficult design problem to solve in a free-form building system. You can freely add or remove elements of any design. Should we restrict your ability to modify designs that you purchase? Thorny problem, one we will look at closely depending on how people play the game. Wow. Okay, so that's an answer that I did not expect. But basically, you know, what I'm getting from this is that it's possible and you can do it, and they're going to have to think about what to do about it. So, wow. Good question, dude. You have just come up with something that I had not considered, but now I'm worried about. I'm definitely going to be posting this in my Discord section for my builders, where we talk about our building plans. This is going to be of interest to us there for sure. For sure. Good question, dude. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, I had to really kind of reflect on that question a little bit. I had to pause the video and just sit here and think about it, because that's one of the things that has really excited me about this game, was the base blueprint system and the selling of those blueprints. And to see such a amazing, unique feature be talked about like this really worries me, because that was one of the coolest things. I thought was the neatest thing I'd ever heard of, and to hear it talk about that like that is really, really sad. Okay, so the next one, Will 400, will there be elevators added to the building set eventually? Funcom Villar says there are currently no plans for this, but something to consider post-launch. That is cool to see them say that, because some of these designs and their insane verticality, I know that you can just use your suspensor belt and flip around between levels, or use your ornithopter and fly around, but that would be neat, and I would be really interested to see that. Okay, this guy right here, Sweater Crafter, he asked some interesting questions. I ought to know, because that's me. Will builders be able to acquire both Harkonnen and Atreides building styles without betrayal, or is the only way to acquire them by betraying a faction and the swearing to the other? I framed that question specifically that way because I wanted to find out as a guild leader whether my people were going to be upset or not because they couldn't get both build styles if we decided to swear to one faction or the other. And Funcom Joel said that is the current plan, to allow you to get access to both. If it isn't there at launch, it will be coming shortly afterwards. And he did not specify, even though I did, through betrayal or not, he did not specify. So thanks for the non-answer. But yeah, he does say that it's current plan to allow you to get both, but he does not specify if it's through betrayal or not. So I framed that question specifically like that so that I could hopefully try to figure that out for you, and it did not get it specified, so I'm sorry. Card Rolls Hard says, I have seen some content creators state that combat is very easy to cheese by equipping all shotguns on your hotbar. So we've seen this one already. We've heard this one talk about that already. I'm in no way saying this will destroy Deep Desert PvP, but he's concerned about it, and I get it, what he's saying. Funcom Joel answers this one again. You will be able to equip the hotbar with all weapons at launch. We will look into hotbar functionality sometime after launch. So that's the second time that one's been asked, so that's obviously on people's minds. Mountain Reading 22. He said, what is your long-term vision for the game? Wow, that's a deep question. And what do you see this as a persistent online game, like a game that players can live in, so to speak, or do you expect most players to play through the content then return when new updates or expansions come out? So this one is kind of almost like the person, well, I don't know, but there's some mechanics in place to alleviate these worries. But let's see what Funcom Joel has to say. The game is designed, let me go back up. Come on now. All right, here we go. The game is designed as a persistent online experience where people can live and take part in the politics of the Imperium. But it is complicated. The game has a fair chunk of launch content, and the in-game systems like the Landsrad and the Deep Desert are designed around the idea of player activity cycles. If you commit to them, there's always something to be done because the Deep Desert resets every week. Yes. The Deep Desert also changes layout each week, and it's our intent to create this pillar of infinite exploration, and that's amazing. That's one of the most innovative things about this game right there, if you ask my opinion. And it's totally my opinion. But there is also a finite level of content outside of those systems. There are a finite number of quests, dungeons, and crafting recipes. The story mission runs through the game and at a certain point ends. More of these finite elements will be added as the game matures. We'll add new features that will arrive with updates. My personal plan runs for years, and as people who have played Conan Exiles can attest, we're committed to adding a lot to the game over time, and I know they did add a lot of content to Conan, so I feel pretty confident that they have a looking forward plan for this game. Very much so. Okay, so this one, Funcom Joel says he's only going to answer a few of the first questions because there's just too many. I get it that this poster wanted to probably keep from having to spam the thread by making multiple posts for each one. I applaud him for that. Spaderia. Can fuel cells be... Let's just look at what he actually answered. Fuel cells can only be looted. Okay, good. I do not remember the exact number of skill points, but you will not be able to unlock all skills on one character. We knew that. You will not be able to increase the backpack size at launch. Okay, we didn't know that, but that's cool. Bodies go into the inventory, only dead ones, no name tags. Okay, so I gotta figure out what that one is. Does a person placed into a death still have to be dead? I mean, can we store them there until needed, like in Conan when sacrificing thralls? And can we toggle names tags above other players so we can see who we're shooting at when in PvP? I've seen streams where everyone is wearing the same armor and no one can tell them whom their partner or guildmate is. Yes, that is one of the things that they said that they had designed purposefully to keep PvP in the Deep Desert interesting. Bodies go in the inventory, only dead ones and no name tags. So you're going to have to find other ways to identify your team, and it's not really that difficult. All you got to do is either wear a certain set of armor that everybody wears so that when you see it you can understand it's them, or wear a certain color swatch that is indicative to your team only, or do certain things like, I don't know, the way you, I don't even know, but there are ways to set that apart to where you can identify your teams. So this guy, Sweater Crafter, he asks the question again, are there maker's marks on items and gear that you have crafted? Like, say, on a sword's info screen, it says something like, crafted by Sweater Crafter. And then Funcom Joel says, the makers will not have their name on the items they craft at launch. So he specified it by saying at launch, so I'm thinking that maybe later on they are planning on adding this. I guess, I don't know. So that was an interesting question, and I know why I asked that, because it's all about the economy, stupid. No, I'm kidding. I want to know that when I sell stuff on the auction house, people recognize my name and know who I am, because I'm a guy that's always there selling. And I want them to know I give good deals, and I want to make a name for myself. And in games like Star Wars Galaxies, where you could actually have a maker's mark saying that you were the guy that made this blaster, people got known for the things that they made, and they knew if you wanted to buy the best blasters, you had to go to Sweater Crafter. If you wanted to buy the best Jedi sword, you had to go to so-and-so type of thing, and it was very cool. Maker's marks are very neat, and I love to see them, and I hope that they decide to integrate those. No Third Panda. Will everyone be able to play the beta test if they sign up on Steam? Also, I wish there was a friend code system that helped you group up with your clan at launch so you get into the same Haga Basin together. I'm still traumatized from Once Human. Bro, I know what you're saying there. That was impossible to get together with your friends in that game. I get it. Funcom Camille says, we will be granting access to a very large number of players for the upcoming large-scale beta weekend. For the best chance of getting in, sign up on Steam and watch the Global LAN Party broadcast on Saturday, where we will be giving away tens of thousands of keys at regular intervals. He didn't really answer this as specific as this poster was wanting, because they wanted a definite answer. Will everybody that signed up on Steam get a key? They're not willing to answer that because they're not wanting us to know the numbers of the people that they're going to give keys to. That's obvious from the comments that we've seen so far. So there's no guarantees. This one right here says, Agreeable Advisor 843, Sabaka Anar. In Dune Awakening, we have two types of equipment. Steel suit for desert exploration and armor for battles. Is it possible to switch between them without having to change all the parts of the set individually? And Funcom Joel says you have to change the pieces manually. So you have to go into your inventory and drag a piece off into your inventory and put a piece on. That's kind of what he's meaning. Or double click on a piece and it equips. Whatever you got to do to make it swap into place, you have to go probably into your paper doll or your inventory to make that happen, because you got to do it manually. Okay, Helicopter says, what is the player number / cap we can expect per world and in the deep desert? How many is several hundreds? How many Haga Basins per world? Funcom Scott says, for beta, most of the worlds will allow a max of 40 players on each server. We will be testing higher numbers on a few worlds, but expect 40 when you are playing. On beta, there will be 20 servers, Haga Basins per world, but we're still working on the perfect number for launch, so this number may increase. For the deep desert, this is more complicated. The deep desert is 9 times the size of Haga Basin, and each section of it can handle more concurrent players. So, I get it. This is a difficult question to answer because of the server structure, and the map layer structure and all that kind of stuff is so different from anything that people are used to. So they ask the questions as if it's something you're used to, and it's just not. It's a whole other animal. So that's a hard question to answer, and I get it, why he answered it in the way he did. Will transmog be a thing? Fashion is peak in-game. Then Funcom Camille says, yes, we have customization options that let you change the appearance of your armor and equipment. We've seen that one answered before already, but we'll go over it again. Violet says, will we get expanded option for the character creator by launch, or at the very least later on? I'm thinking heterochromia, longer hair options, or more options in general, hair accents, more makeups, the option to pick multiple tattoos, etc. Also, are we able to change character appearance later in the game after we start? Funcom Villar says, we have expanded the options since the character creator was released. We will continue to expand it post-launch. Changing your appearance will be a post-launch update. So that's cool. That's really super cool, and I'm glad Violet asked that question, because that means that later on after launch we'll be able to modify our characters if we see new options that we didn't have when we created them the first time. Now we'll be able to go back in and select some of those changes after launch, and that's cool. I like the idea of that. Respect for All says, are military ranks with a faction going to be visible on the player's suit when achieved? Is this something you might consider implementing? Funcom Villar says this is not the case for launch, but is something we will consider post-launch. Iron Squid says, 501, will there be a way to re-customize your character after first creating them? So that's basically the same thing we just read up there. And he says, again, we're planning to add it into one of the post-launch updates. Sorvina Savage asks the questions about factions and betrayals. Who is the third faction? Don't need specifics, but people want to plan ahead. I totally feel you on that. Can we betray once total or once per faction? Will the third faction get a build set too? Excellent questions. I love this third one because that is something that I have been tossing around with my builders group all the time, is what do we do if the third faction gets their own build set too? Oh my god, what are we going to do? Are we going to be team holdout so that we can see what the third faction is before we make a choice, or what? But that's cool. His answer about the third faction was play and find out, PAFO, so they're not willing to let loose of that information right now, and I get it. I didn't think they would answer that one, but, you know, we knew. Then it says, can we betray once total or once per faction? And he says specifically once per faction. So keep that in mind, folks. If you're thinking about how you're going to game the system on how you can acquire all those build sets and all that stuff, it's only once per faction. And then will the third faction get a build set too? He gave us the answer we've been dying to know. Yes, they will. So, awesome. Great question, Sorvina Savage. So, Old Shopping 2839 says, if I'm visiting a friend in Haga Basin 1.1, do a mission with her, get loot from it, then she gives me her favorite sword, because I had her back. Can I bring all that loot and the sword home to my base on Haga Basin 1.2 simply by logging out and then back into my Haga Basin? Or do I have to store it in some common social hub in order to transfer it over? And this was a really good question. I'm glad he asked this in such detail, because that kind of explains a lot for us, really. Funcom Camille says, you can bring back anything in your character inventory to your home Haga Basin server. So as long as you can carry it, as long as you're not overweight and can't move or whatever, or hit your inventory item space weight cap, whatever that's going to look like, you should be able to bring it back with you. So great question, bud. Funcom Joel also says some stuff on this. Yes, you can bring your loot back with you. The only restriction is what you can carry. So yeah, I should have just looked one more line down, and that was exactly what I just kind of said. Funcom Villar says you can bring back anything you can put in your inventory. So they're getting more and more specific as we go, trying to narrow this down for people. You can bring back anything you can put in your inventory. So if it can go in your inventory, you can transfer with it. Thank you for the specificity on this answer. This is big for a lot of people because honestly, what's the point of traveling to another server to play with friends if you can't bring back your loot? That would just be stupid. Woobsy00 says, are the people that have pre-ordered and requested access to the beta going to get access to the beta, or is it all open to chance? And unfortunately, Funcom Camille says everyone will have an equal chance to gain access to the upcoming large-scale beta weekend. Personally, I don't agree with this answer. I think that the people that have already shown their company that they will give them their money should have priority over people that have not. And I think that's not fair. I believe that if I'm going to give them my money, I should get priority. Call me entitled, call me whatever you will, but it's just the way the world works. I'm giving you my money. So prioritize me, you know? I mean, come on. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of opinion in this video, but that's what you signed up for. Evan Dub says, are there any measures or gameplay mechanics that will prevent bigger clans from snowballing compared to small clans? Example, if I'm playing together with 2 to 3 friends and we have a 5-people clan, it seems like there is no point of us attempting to go into the deep desert if there are clans of up to 32 people. Will there be servers that have limits on clan size? And I get it why he's asking this, because he's more than likely an ARK player that's played on small tribe servers that have a maximum on how many people can be in your tribe. It's like 4. Those are a very fun experience, and I get it why he would, want to ask this question. And Funcom Joel says we have some specific features in place that will make Zergs have a harder time. Friendly fire will be on for guilds. There are no name tags. The issues of large groups dominating in multiplayer games is a difficult problem to solve entirely. So they're making it difficult for them, but not impossible. So I'm just going to tell you, a dedicated group that wants to do something will find a way. So there you go. Just have at that what you will, but that's what it is. Will there be nudity like in Conan? Will 060200 says. There are some features that Conan Exiles have that we won't replicate, so the answer is basically no. I've seen pictures of people in their underwear, so they do have like small clothes, tops and bottoms, so I'm okay with that. I don't need boobs in my face every time I turn around. Are you anticipating any further delays for launch? Johnny Bronto says. Okay, this is the question that's on everybody's mind, but they're afraid to say it. He did. Game development, according to Joel, game development is never late. It arrives precisely when it means to. Not anticipating any further in terms of delays. So they are wizards. They're saying. Very good. I'm glad to see this answer though, because I hope they're not. I've already taken off work for release, and I don't want to have to push that back again. Dark I1F says, my main concern is important resources being locked behind PvP zones. Okay, here we go. This is one of the other elephants in the room right here coming out finally. I've been wondering why it took so long for somebody to ask this question. As I understand it, specific resources can be only found from specific locations. That means some resources will be available from PvP zones only. How are you making sure that this design does not prevent PvE progression, especially for players that start late? I fully expect geared PvPers to camp these locations as they know people will have to go to them to progress, like shipwrecks. By the way, having PvP resources potentially unavailable from the market is not really an effective answer, as they will be price gouged. You've got it there, brother. That's exactly right. And this will be much worse if important quest lines are locked behind them, such as skill tree unlocks. Yeah, I get you. I totally understand what you're saying. This is one of my main concerns right here. Funcom Joel says, Deep Desert is largely PvP enabled, and that is where you'll find the highest tier of resources and materials. You do not necessarily have to fight other players for them, as long as you can manage to avoid others, although there is always the risk. In Haga Basin, there are a few areas with PvP that hold important resources, but you can also find these resources elsewhere with a higher time investment. And a lot of times they say, but you can just buy it on the market. Well, that's not really a good answer either. Because if there are resources that are in a PvP area, PvP players are smart. They know when they put those items on the exchange to sell them for millions of Solari, because they know people will have to eventually break down and pay that. And that's not cool. That's price gouging, exactly what this guy's talking about. So yeah, I'm not convinced about this answer. This is something that's been bothering me since day one, honestly. We got the snap to grid question again. They already answered that though. So private servers estimate or possibility. This is something that a lot of people are asking because they are afraid that their experience is not going to be everything they wanted it to be because of the mechanics that are allowed, and they're wondering, can I make my own server so me and my friends can have the experience we want? Funcom Scott says, yes, we are working on them now with various partners across the globe. I can't commit to us having them at launch, though. We'll try to get them out as soon as possible. So they are planning on allowing private servers, but they just got to figure out how to make it work, because they're still wanting to use the server stitching in the deep desert even across private servers that are grouped together in some cluster form or something. And they got to figure out what that looks like and how that's going to work. But they have said multiple times that yes, they do want the option for people to have their own custom private servers. They just got to figure out how they're going to do it. Salutius Nictator says, pretty much every online game that has servers or shards or worlds always spin up too many accounts for the large influx of players at launch, and then over time have to merge servers. How do you plan to handle world or siege merges when population for that world or siege dies down, specifically in regards to a player's base, their collection of resources within their base, and any vehicles they own? Will players be able to transfer to a different world or different siege permanently? So yeah, let's see what Funcom Joel has to say about that. Again, he's answering, yes, we will allow permanent transfers post-launch, which means after launch, after everything calms down and they figure out what they're going to do. The base situation is one of the most difficult parts of this discussion because it won't be possible to ensure that the same land claim is available on the new server. We'll do our best when the time comes, but the reality is that you might get all your stuff, but not your base location. Okay, so unfortunately, this is the downside to having servers that go dead or go low pop. They always look at merging them because server cost is insane, and you can't justify carrying a server for 5 people. So you have to at that point think about merging, and when that happens, there are going to be character names, base building locations, things like that people claim, and now they're going to have to figure out what to do, because on different ones, some character may have the same name, some guild may have the same name, some person may have the same land claim as the one that's being merged, and they're going to have to figure out how to make that happen. But that's a common problem among lots of games of this style. It's just, you knew when you asked this question this was going to be the answer, dude. So yeah. Snid Splendorous, do I have to be logged into my Haga Basin to pay my Imperial taxes, or can I be logged into a social hub or the deep desert? Can I pay my Imperial taxes from the Haga Basin queue? Taxes are paid in Harco Village or Arrakis at the Imperial Tax Authority. This is the only place you can pay taxes. Okay, that's an interesting answer, because I thought you could pay your taxes from your subfief console, but I guess you cannot. I know that you can refill all your generators from there, and I thought that you could pay your taxes there too, but I think you just go to it and you can actually see what your taxes are. But you actually have to go to these social hubs, Harco Village or Arrakis, to pay your tax to the Imperial Tax Authority. That's interesting. That forces you to have to get out to the social hubs to do something like once a week or something, pay your taxes, or however long it's going to be. So that's really cool. This background noise says, what does in-game loop look like for those of us that are less interested in the PvP aspect? Is progression still viable or fun at later stages of the game if we want to avoid getting ripped apart by larger clans or factions? And Funcom Joel says, there are intense Imperial testing station challenges in the deep desert, even in the PvE areas. In the deep desert, comma, even in the PvE areas, okay? I don't really know how to take that answer. I don't know what he's really meaning. Is he meaning the PvE area at the start of the deep desert zone, or the Haga Basin areas? I don't know. That's interesting. I'm not really sure how to answer that. Minimus says, another question that everybody's been wanting to know, but we kind of found out today through some of the posts that some of the streamers made. What time will the servers open for the beta on May 9th? And you'll just have to take this answer and throw it into Google and say, what is this to your time zone, and let it translate it for you, unless you just know it right offhand. But he's saying the servers will open at 12 o'clock GMT on May 9th. For me, that I'm in CST, that's going to be 7 a.m. for me. So you just have to figure it out for your own time zone and see where you're at. As we send more waves of invites, we will roll out more servers. So if you aren't included in the first wave, don't worry. There will be fresh start servers for you when you start. Okay, so that's interesting. So they're saying that's going to be a continual process on Friday. So maybe that means if you didn't get an invite at the start, don't lose hope. You might still get one as they spin up more. Or you could wait till the next day for the stream from PAX to try to get one of the tens of thousands of keys they said they're going to give out. But if you're like me, you took off Friday from work so you could be there, hoping that you could hopefully get a heads up a day or two before if you're going to get included, so you could know whether or not you've wasted your day off or not. And they're not, it doesn't sound like they're going to tell us until Friday. So that's, it is what it is, but I'm just not happy with it. Okay, so let's load up some more comments. Man, there's a lot, and this video's went over an hour so far, but hey, I want to look at all these because there's a lot of good information here that we previously didn't know before. So there's some great questions in this AMA. Great job, everybody. Snid Splendorous says, because player bases have vertical limits, if I build a base on a cliffside down low, can another player come along and build a base directly above me on the same cliffside? Or the inverse could be possible, building underneath up to you type of thing. So I get it why he's asking this question. Games like Ark have had kind of a problem with that, people building underneath you, and then they cause you to not be able to place things because they cause a zone that's too close to another player type of situation. But Funcom Camille says no, it is not possible for another player to build a base in the same vertical above or below yours, and that's because the build radius that you have kind of looks at that when they're trying to place their claim, and it'll just tell them they can't place it there from what I've seen in other videos. So this is really good. I like the answer here because I don't know how many times I've been frustrated by players pillaring around me and causing me not to be able to expand my buildings because they're trying to make me mad and make me move because they want your space. So they put pillars all the way around where you're building, and basically you can't expand in any direction anymore because they pillared you out. That's a very shady tactic, but it's common in Ark, so I get it, and I like this, the way they've set up their build zone for you personally. Cohiba. This is a guy I'm familiar with. He's actually part of my guild, so I'm really interested to see his questions because he had some really good ones. The Deep Desert questions. So his questions on this post are focused around the Deep Desert. The Landsraad has control point objectives for the Deep Desert with regards to PvP and control points. Number one, do we have to discover the control points every week, or do they respawn in similar locations in the Deep Desert? Can more than one squad hold a control point for a faction? If we have 16 players, 4x4, do they all get control points per minute, or is it something only one 4-person team can get? Number two, how close to a control point can I build a base? Many bases. Number three, it would be trivial to power a deep desert base for a week, but how does the shield down mechanic work during a non-Coriolis storm? Would someone have to be in a vehicle outside during the storm to damage a base? How do they avoid getting hurt? If I have a single, double, triple wall, what is it going to take for someone to destroy my shield generator during the storm window? Is someone one person, 4 people, 32 people? Is this something they can accomplish? And bonus Landsraad question, can I still unlock higher tier personal rewards after an alliance wins a square? What if one of the top rewards for a square, but my alliance loses a square early? Oh boy, he was intense with these questions now. Funcom Joel says the Deep Desert layout changes every week, so control points need to be discovered every time. Okay, very good answer. You can build a relatively short runway for number 2. Okay, so a relatively short relatively short runaway. I don't know how to really take that answer. I think he's meaning runway. I'm not sure. How close can I build? I didn't really answer that. The shields go down in the Deep Desert during a normal storm. Any obstacles the builder puts in your way have to be dealt with. Example, walls between you and the subfief. Okay, so very good. So now we know that we're probably going to honeycomb our bases at some point when we're trying to keep people from busting in and getting the subfief. Don't know how feasible that is, but that's now a consideration to take. Great questions, bud. Let's see, who else got answered? Kushjahaja says, is a third faction planned for balance or what? Is the game going to have any kind of MTX systems like an in-game store or battle pass for selling cosmetics, or is it just going to be the seasonal DLC? Is an in-game PvE activity planned away from the Deep Desert, something akin to a raid difficulty dungeon? And are the unique weapons and armors going to look different, or do they all share the same default look? Funcom Scott says, and this is something everybody knows, so I'm not really sure why they're asking this. Yes, there will be a third faction that we will introduce post-launch. They're not willing to say who it's going to be. They're going to hold that close to their chest, obviously. No NTX, no battle packs, no in-game store, no subscription, no BS. It will just be the game purchases and the seasonal DLC. Very good. For in-game PvE activity, we won't have raids like you'd see in an MMORPG, but we will continue to add more late-game content for all players of all types post-launch. Necrofeminu. Is there anything implemented behind the scenes from stopping a gaming community for going AFK for the night, stopping anyone else from entering a Deep Desert section while their late nights players farm spice with zero chance at opposition, since each section of the Deep Desert is said to hold 100 people? And this is a big question that I have had personally, because this ties into server queues and the fact that they keep glossing over the questions when asked, is there an inactivity timer? to where when you're in activity for a certain period of time, do you get kicked? Because there's many ways that players know how to get around inactivity timers. Rubber bands, screwdrivers, it's just, you can do it. It's easy, macros, all that kind of stuff. It says AFK players will get kicked after some time, but I don't think he's really answering what about AFK players that know how to beat inactivity timers. So if they're just AFK, they're going to get kicked, so that at least has some hope for us that are sitting in queue that we'll get a chance to get in. But a lot of players, like I said, they're experienced survival game players. They know how to get around inactivity timers. They will find ways. Stony Lynchen, when we raid a base in the deep desert successfully, can we also loot containers there? Or is this only possible when the full loot decree is active, or will that never be possible? You cannot loot a player container you don't have permission to, but you can destroy it and take its contents that way. So, okay. So you can't loot it, but you can if you destroy it. So if you blow the box up or take away all its hit points and it crumbles, or whatever it does, blows up, crumbles, disintegrates, you can pick up the stuff that was inside it. Okay. All right. Kind of knew that, but it's interesting to see it in an answer. The world of Dune, bubble blubber blah blah blub. The world of Dune is all about power, not just military might, but economic influence as well. How does spice factor into the game's economy? And Funcom Joel says, spice is obviously extremely valuable on a personal, group, and guild level. On a personal level, it fuels your special abilities. It's required for higher tier crafting because, as we've seen, there's lots of spice-infused this and that as components. It is required for the lance rat. Spice delivery is the only consistent delivery that will appear on the lance rat every week. Okay, that's cool. So that's, items to win on the lance rat bingo. Spice delivery. So deliver 10,000 spice to me at this location and I will grant you a win on this square, basically. Colonel Gohard. How exactly will base raiding work in the deep desert? Can a shield be damaged by other players? Can it only occur after a storm? Also, will buildings on the PvE strip of the deep desert also experience a wipe from the Coriolis storm? So we already knew that one, but let's see what Funcom Villar has to say. Players can't damage base shields, but the shields will go down in the deep desert during a sandstorm. So that's about the only time that you can damage a player's base. Is when a sandstorm takes down the shield. Everything in the deep desert gets reset every week. Even bases in the PvE area. So we already knew that, but there you go again. Above Infinity says, I've been reading a lot of y'all's answers in Discord about servers and guild maxing land claims. Are you limited to one character per world, and can you visit a friend's server while they're offline? Funcom Villar says you are limited to one character, one world. We aim to be able to visit a different server even without having a friend there for launch even. So they're trying to say that yes, you will be able to visit a different Haga Basin even without having a friend there for launch even. They're trying to make that work. So that's cool. Is there an estimated window for console release? China Kung Pao says. Funcom Camille says, we aim to release Dune Awakening on consoles by the end of next year. Wow, okay, so that is the most specific answer I have ever seen on this question so far. So that was kind of a bomb dropping right there, folks. I don't know if you caught this or not, but they're saying, is there an estimated window for console release? People have been asking that over and over and over. They're like, if you can't tell us when, just give us a kind of a time frame. Well, here you go. This is the first time I've ever seen them quantify this. We aim to release Dune Awakening on consoles by the end of next year. So by the end of 2026, that is what they're saying. So there you go. This question has been asked 10 billion times. Finally, they quantify an answer. I wonder if this guy's going to get in trouble for that. I'm kidding. Blackfire 1199 says, we know the list of sieges for each server in advance so guilds or friends can coordinate their starting world better. And see, this is something that I have issue with, because a lot of people ask this as if that's going to help them figure anything out. But the problem is, when the game releases, everything's going to be full. So it doesn't matter if you know the names of the servers in advance. It's really not going to do you any good. They're going to be full. So yeah, whatever. I mean, Camille says, yes, we do intend to share a list of worlds and servers or steeches for Head Start and launch to let people coordinate better. Okay, great. But it's really not going to do anybody any good, because everything's going to be full. So Samurai 13 says, the potential server queues are a concern for me. I understand how the server world and layers work from the video. However, from my understanding below is right, how do you plan on dealing with long queues? I don't mean the initial launch period queues, which are to be expected. You stated in the video that each stage can have 200 users, but only 40 of those can be online at the same time. So 40 concurrent users out of 200, and this is where everybody's getting that from. He's talking about it right here. For example, Saturday morning I log in and there are 40 users already playing. I'm number 41. So in a queue waiting, these users decide to stay in the basin for 45 hours, building, mining, whatever. Will I be stuck in that queue for 45 hours until one of them logs off, or until they go to the deep desert or to one of the player hubs? So Funcom Scott says the number 200 was probably a miscommunication on our part. I'm not sure where that was mentioned or in what context. There isn't any limit like that on a server or a Haga Basin. We restrict access to the server when the concurrent player cap is reached, which will be 40 for the beta weekend. Once there are 40 players in that active specific Haga Basin, any new player trying to connect will be in a queue. There are some population limits, but that is all based on activity, which is only for how many players have connected to the server recently. We have these in place to make sure there is enough buildable space on the map so that you can claim a base location without running around for hours, I guess, looking for one. We will have plenty of hardware at launch so that people can play on low, medium, or high population worlds if they want to. We will have hundreds of worlds and thousands of servers at launch. For queue length on the closed beta, we have not been intentionally limiting the amount of hardware. The queue lengths are very short. So okay, let's just hope that this works out, because there's really nothing we can say at this point. This horse has been beat to death, so we just have to, it is what it is, and we have to hope we survive it. And this is a question that I have wanted to know too. Lasad Bubarma, thank you so much for asking this question. Can we pre-download the game for the beta and for the launch? And he says we will have preload for launch for sure. He did not say anything about the beta. So I don't know if this is purposefully skipping over that so that they don't have to say that they're going to have a preload for the beta, or if he just didn't catch that he didn't answer both parts of the question. I don't know, but he's saying preload for launch at sure. So that's for sure. So that's at least good to know that. Just the Worst 91 says, can you update or edit your character's appearance after initial creation? This has been asked like 3 times and answered 3 times so far. Not for launch, but we're looking at this functionality post-launch. Then we have Bubbly Cranberry. Will there be possibility to hot swap abilities or techniques? Will there be any in-game character ranking across PvE, PvP titles for like Atreides or Harkonnen faction ranks as private, captain, major, colonel, that sort of thing? That's an interesting question. I believe we all, Funcom as well, all Dune lore fans want Dune Awakening to be a success for many years to come. As improper behavior, cheating, and exploiting can ruin the game experience of other players, what measures will Funcom put in place in order to address such behaviors? Can you explain lunging and sprint attacks, reckless lunge technique? So first answer was no from Joel. No, we would prefer people to prepare their builds, not hot swap on the fly. The cost of making build changes is reflected in the current setup, so it is going to cost you when you make a build change, and it's probably something you're going to have to take into consideration before you do the type of content you're going to do. So if you're going to go gather, and I'm guessing, but this is kind of what I'm thinking. If you're going to go gather, for instance, you'll set your planetologist setup up so that you do the best gathering you can. And then if you're going to go play PvP, then you're going to probably want to change your build, because you're not going to want to go into PvP with a gathering setup. You're going to want skills that help you in PvP. So that's, not hot swap on the fly, though, is what he's saying. He is saying you are given titles as you climb your faction, but we do not use a name tag system, so they're only in your inventory as a vanity point. There's nothing outside of the factions, and there's no overworld tags over your characters. They've said that because of PvP, so you're not going to have something where you actually have a tag title visible, I don't think. I don't know for sure, but that seems that way to me. We have reporting systems, chat moderation, and anti-cheat. This game is also server authoritative, and we do not plan to release the server code, so that helps with that, because then that keeps cheaters from being able to know everything. They will figure it out eventually, but that helps. Sprint plus attack equals lunge attack. You see people doing them and missing a lot in the streams that were released last week. We've been tweaking the targeting on them, smiley face. So they obviously know that's an issue and they've been working on it. Will there be an option to preload for launch day? Yes. They just answered that like 2 questions up. T.O. David said, will Dune Awakening feature regional servers, especially for South America, to ensure stable latency and a smooth experience across all gameplay aspects, including exploration, PvE, training, PvP? Yes, we will provide the best possible experience for players around the world, and we'll have servers in South America. You can check out all the locations on this map, and that map is the one they show, the global, that shows their server cluster positionings on the global map. We've all probably seen that. Let's see, there's some more. Okay, this one. Respect for All says, I really like the scouting idea with the Mentat abilities, maybe combined with the map-making planetologist. Is scouting for the enemy or locations of spice fields going to be a strong element in the game? Can you elaborate a bit more on that role or aspect of the game? Like, will certain suits or abilities make you harder to detect for other players, or will there just be a name tag arrow above my head saying, here I am? But also, how does map-making work? Any details you can give? So Funcom Joel says we don't have name tags, so you won't be easily visible. You will be able to swatch up your gear to be more or less visible against the environment. I love this answer, because that means camouflage is a real thing. And if you don't have a name tag above your head, then the possibility that you could hide in the environment in plain sight and then spring and attack is that's going to be so fun, trying to come up with some camouflage with a swatch set that matches the environment. Oh yeah, that's going to be fun. We expect scouting to be a large part of the game, but of course no plan survives first contact with players. The goal was to create a role for people who love exploring and reinforce that role with the deep desert resets and the infinite exploration pillar of the game. You craft sync charts from the map screen. Once you have learned the ability, you need blank sync charts in order to craft new ones, and that's talking about map making. They call them sync charts, maps, same thing. Top Firefighter 4680. Is there any mechanics to prevent Zergs in PvP? Oh, yeah, here we go. When one actual guild has 3 to 4 full 32-player rosters in one place in the deep desert. Yeah, that's called teaming, and that's something that we're quite familiar with in other games. Groups of full cap guilds teaming together. It's a problem. Can you tell more about deep desert entrances? Are any measures to prevent entrance camping? Dude, you are asking some good questions. Thank you. This is one of my fears right here. not being able to get to stuff because they're being camped by Zergs. Is it possible to raid a base inside Deep Desert? If so, maybe no. Is it possible to move your character between worlds? If no, maybe in the future. Okay, so the only question that Valar says that hasn't been answered elsewhere is number 2, and that's, can you tell more about the preventing entrance camping? It says the entrances are in PvE areas, and you can't build in the entrance areas. Okay, so I didn't say what about the deep desert areas where there are areas that you can go into and explore and fight. I don't know. I don't know why he makes that specific designation. I mean, I get it that the science labs and all that kind of stuff are mainly in PvE areas, but there's some of that stuff in Deep Desert too, from what we understand. Can they camp those? I don't know. Can't build in entrance areas. Let's hope that that holds true for PvE and PvP as well. Because if it does, that would be really cool, because that would help with that. Where's Zombie 16? If my friend and I are not on the same server but in the same guild, am I able to join their server while they are offline and have access to their base in the same capacity as if they were online and play in their world primarily instead of playing in mine? Your friends, according to Camille, must be online for you to visit their Haga Basin server. However, if you are in a multi-person guild and everyone is on your friends list, only one person needs to be online for this option to be available. Okay? Edit. I was just told that we do plan to give players the option to visit another Haga Basin server in their world for launch, even if you don't have friends online there, though. Good news. Okay. Folks, this right here is big. It changes everything. This edit right here changes everything. Because before they told us you can't go to your friend's Haga Basin layer unless they're there, unless they're online. You have to actually click to travel to them to get there. And now they're saying that they're going to give you the ability to do it if your friends aren't even online there. That's great news, because what that means is if in their bases they have given you permissions to be able to open doors, open storage, use crafting stations, use their bikes, whatever, then when you go there you can do those things more than likely, I'm guessing. So that right there is big. I mean, I can't understate how big that statement right there is. That's a big deal right there. That changes a lot of stuff. That may change my guild's entry plan, honestly, right there. That's one sentence. May change our whole entry plan. Glad to see that. I'm going to have to share that in my forum later with my guild. Atreides says, or Frontier Zeron says, where is the servers located, especially in Asia? If I have a blueprint made from a certain building set like the Ultimate Edition one, can I still use it and fill the building block hologram with the necessary building materials, or do I need to have the building set unlocked to use that blueprint? That's a great question, because some of these cosmetic things that are going to be taken as part of the blueprint may be part of a building set that you don't have access to, cosmetic set you don't have access to. That's cool. Can you reset the skill points on the skill tree? I assume when visiting a friend in a different Haga Basin, I will be able to transfer items back and forth. Yes, we already know that. Will there ever be faction equipment which only certain respective factions can use? Yes, we already know that. So number 2, he says, if you have unlocked the building sets you have to unlock the building sets in order to use the building pieces in the blueprint. You will be told if you don't have all the pieces unlocked. Interesting. Number 3 says, yes, you can reset the skill points spent on the skill tree. We knew that already, though. Number 4, yes, you can bring back anything you can put in your inventory. And number 5, building sets are currently faction aligned, but not gear. It is not on the roadmap to change this. I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. We're going to move on. Kent Hawking says, during the last live stream, the team mentioned factions and a possible third faction being introduced to help things even or competitive if one side gets too strong. Will it be possible to join this third faction as a player? I've always loved the idea of a neutral faction, one which doesn't get to control territory but can support or engage with anyone and make some cash. Yes, the third faction is 4 players. We aren't releasing many details on them before launch, but they will interact with the faction system and Landsrat in a unique way. So that's cool. That's very interesting information. Thanks, Scott. That's cool. Appropriate Worry says, have you addressed the concerns about combat and what are your thoughts about the current state of combat? Villar says, switching between melee, range, and abilities is fun and intense. Playing optimally like this is highly encouraged. However, we're still working on combat and have some exciting melee updates on the way. Okay, let's skip on down. Getting close to the end, folks. You've hung in there this long. I applaud you. But there's some good stuff in here. If you're a true Dune Awakening fan, you're going to want to hear every bit of this. I know I did. I had to work today, so I couldn't get it live. So yeah, this is me getting to it as early as I can for you guys. Do you plan to re-implement the tank in the future, as shown in the trailer? We are indeed planning to enable the tank post-launch. So after launch, they're going to enable the tank again. That's cool. Never had any experience with it, but I imagine that'll be fun. Will the servers be region locked? Is it possible to play with my friends in different regions, or do we have to pick a region for everyone to start it and accept that not everyone will have good pings? Okay, so this is a question that is big for my guild because we have people that are in multiple different regions, and we have wondered, are we going to be allowed to play together or not? We did know that the servers were not region locked already though, so we had already been planning on it, and some of those players were just willing to accept the fact that to be with our group, they were going to have some bad ping probably. They are saying here, though, there is no region lock, so you can play in any region you want. So if I was in Central USA, I could play on an Asia server if I wanted to. Probably wouldn't be wise, but I could do it. Since you can have one character per world, you can also create multiple characters in each region. So you can actually have a character on each world layer of your server cluster. So if I am on the Central USA server cluster and there are 5 world layers on that server cluster, I can put a character on each one of them. And each one of those world layers has their own set of Haga Basins and Deep Desert and all that. So you could do that. I honestly don't know. I mean, I know there's going to be people that don't have a life and have the time to do that, but I work, so I have a family and I have everything else, and I don't really see myself playing more than one character, honestly, if you want to know the truth. So I don't know why. I mean, I know there's people that will do that. They're just that insane. But there will be Harvester for Harvest the Spice, and the question is yes. Still PC only at launch? The answer is yes. Still PC only for launch. The console version will come out sometime next year, so now they're finally quantifying it for us again. If I go visit my friend on another siege, can I sell my items on their marketplace? Oh, that's an interesting question I never thought of. Let's look at this. National Outcome 6084. Good question. Can I sell my items on their marketplace, and will I get the money if I don't go back there but it sells? Example, our marketplace is global, and if not, can I sell on other ones? I already know the answer to this, but this is an interesting question on this one. Funcom Camille says the exchange is shared across all Haga Basin servers in the same world. So it won't be an issue in this scenario. So he's saying he's going to go visit his friend on another Haga Basin. And they are all shared across all the Haga Basins on that world layer. So if there's 20 Haga Basins on your world layer, all 20 of them share the same exchange. So that's pretty cool. But I don't think that's going to be as many people as people think. But we'll see how that works. We will see how that works. Okay, so there's probably more on here, but this video has already went an hour and 32 minutes long. Let me just click the button and see what happens. I'm probably going to cut it short if I don't get to the end here pretty quick. Untlick says, are we going to see Chris knives and other rare weapons or possibly player titles? Funcom Joel says there is a form of Chris knife in the game already, but it requires a certain amount of sacrifice to receive it. We do not have plans for titles apart from faction titles, but these only show in the inventory anyway, so they're not going to be showing over your head, so you need to get away from that thought. There are no tags in this game. You're going to see people running around, and you're not going to know who they are unless they identify themselves with their clothing or their actions or emotes or something, you know. If I'm planning a longer vacation or work-related trip that requires me to disconnect from the game and last longer than a generator can power and protect my base, how can I ensure that my base remains intact and all my items stored are safe? Is there a backup or vacation mode plan? Funcom Scott says your base can have power for up to 2 weeks, and then the shield will come down. When your base is unshielded, the sandstorms will start destroying your base. But this is an instance and is a slow process inside everything as well. You have options if you're going on vacation for a long time, like blueprinting your base and storing resources in the bank. So I don't know if this is correct or not, because, I mean, I know this guy's a developer, and obviously he knows more about his game than I do, but I have heard other developers in other live streams say 20 days, 21 days, a full generator can run your shield before it comes down. And he says 2 weeks. That does not seem right to me. I'm going to have to argue with this. I'm sorry. Because other developers have said 20 days and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's see if we get any more answers. Will I be able to later upgrade from Standard to Ultimate Edition to get all the available cosmetics? Yes, we will have this option after launch. Good question, Voluntary. That's an interesting question, because a lot of people are going to be like, man, I wish I would have bought that Ultimate Edition because now I want that Caladan building set. Cosmetics pack. Yeah, a lot of people are going to be doing that because those look so sexy. I'm just saying it. That's going to be a thing. Shade Freeze says, will guilds limit the amount of building you can do per person, or does it stack the amount of outpost bases you can make per player in the guild? The number of bases that can be built is limited per player and is not affected by the number of players in a guild. So we kind of knew that already. We knew that you can have like 3 or 4 consoles per player. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's been stated before, and unless it changes, it's per player, not per guild. Can we at least get a console release window? Okay. They said it again. Our current plan is to release console version before the end of 2026. Will we have OCE servers? And if so, where will they be? Yes, there will be servers in OCE. We will just set them up. We just set them up this week, and they will be available to play on during the beta this week. And the servers are located in Sydney, so you should have great ping. Wow, that's a good one for people in Australia and around that area. Helpful Shift says, are our characters safe and backed up so I can take a break for a few months and my character and his gain levels with skill points will still be there when I come back? I know bases go after a few weeks of no maintenance. Your character is safe when you log out. Only unshielded vehicles and bases will decay. So your character is going to be safe. You can log out for months and then come back, it sounds like, and pick up with your character right where you left off. Now, your inventory and your base and all that, that's going to depend on if you made a blueprint of it and put it in storage or stored your items, that kind of thing. Okay, there's one. I almost missed it. Oh, it's another one of mine. When you list items on the exchange, does it show in the listing the name of the player listing it so that we can try to earn a reputation for being a reliable seller or possibly a bad seller? Because if you're somebody that likes to rip people off, are they going to recognize your name after a while? And Joel says, yes, it does show the name of the person listed. Nice. So that's going to help with reputation. Wow. This guy had a lot of questions and they didn't get answered because there was a wall of text there. This may be getting close to the point where they finally dropped off. Will Dune Awakening be available on Game Pass? At launch, we will only be on Steam and PC. Great question, BRD, because I'm actually somebody that was subscribed to Game Pass for Ark just here recently so that I could do the mobile login thing on my backbone, and that would have been cool to know. So thank you, but I also have a Steam Deck, so I have it covered one way or another. I'm happy about that, I think. I don't know if it's going to be on Steam Deck or not. Boy, I wish somebody would have asked that question. I know people have asked that in the past, would it be available on Steam Deck, but they haven't really wanted to elaborate on that, but I have a feeling it will be. Will future cosmetics be paid DLC only, or will there be free ones added as well? Dismal Pear says. We will have both free and DLC cosmetics at post-launch. Neat. I like that. Free ones are cool. Okay, let's view more comments and see if it keeps on going. Yeah, it keeps on, boys. Oh my goodness, but I'm not seeing anything answered. Okay, here we go. If we get a key for this weekend's open beta, will we be able to live stream? Yes, they've already answered that over and over. There is no NDA. You can stream or record anything you want on the large-scale beta weekend. We already knew that. I'm on the fence for purchasing as I'm nervous about PvP-focused aspect of the game and how it might be the all requirement for endgame. I quite traditionally prefer PvE-focused titles with narrative hooks, such as Final Fantasy XIV. Is there any details you can share about PvE narratives for players like me? Funcom Joel says the game has a strong focus on narrative in the main story, the factions, the advanced trainers, and the contracts that can be done in the world. There is plenty there with more to come. PvE content tends to be finite in that players consume it much faster than it can be produced unless you put really strong gating in place, and we will continue to update the game with PvE content over time. How often will we be seeing seasonal updates or events? Every season. We are aiming to have large updates roughly every 3 months, which go along with the DLC release dates we have set. Okay, awesome. Updates every 3 months. Jerk Ferry says, what is the purpose of sieges? If you're capable of hosting 500 plus players in the deep desert, why not just have bigger servers for everything? Haga Basin has a higher density of content than the deep desert, mostly NPC count, so we can't have as many players active on that map, but it is also substantially bigger, so there is more room for players to claim land, build, and explore without having 100 players gobbling up all the land. Okay, that's a good answer. What were the big lessons you took from Conan and how have you improved them in Dune? Great. Too many to answer here, but come to my GDC talk. Okay, so I guess they're going to improve on that later. That was a good question, by the way, though, because there were a lot of things that should have been learned from Conan, for sure. Oh my gosh, there was some issues, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so I'm looking, and I'm not really seeing any more dev answers. Let's keep on going. No, okay, there's one. With regards to Steam, if we wish to upgrade, can we do it? Yes, they said they would do that. I'm a fan of Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky, which have done a lot of support and improvement post-release. How many years of support has Funcom budgeted for? And Scott says, how many copies are you planning to buy? We plan to support Dune Awakening from years to come, and we'll be releasing updates to the main story, new content, and location for players to visit. As long as people keep playing the game, we'll keep making content for it. Very good. I like that answer. Because I'm somebody that if I'm hooked and I'm in, I'll play it for years. So I get it. Hi, devs. I just want to say Apprehensive said, thank you for all the love and hard work you put in Dune. Someone been waiting since day one, a long-time fan. It means a lot to see how much passion was poured into it. And my question, will the new faction have anything to do with the Fremen? Also, if I want to fully embrace the Fremen way of life, I'll be missing out on major opportunities by not aligning with Atreides or Harkonnen. Thank you for being here and supporting us. I hope everyone enjoys their time on Arrakis for years to come. And then Valar says, thanks for everyone for the questions. We'll see you on Arrakis. And they didn't even answer it. Didn't answer his question. They're not going to tell us who the third faction is. They're just not going to do it. Not until they're ready to release it. The gunplay looks a bit rough sometimes, but even more alarming, melee feels very bad right now. Are you guys aware of this, and will it be fixes to both? Joel had some comments on this. You should play it. There's a clear difference between the feedback we receive from people who have played it and the people who have watched someone else play it. Please set expectations according to the genre. We're doing a lot more features than shooter or melee focused. We're not trying to compete with those games. Our aim was to be top class in the survival genre, and we feel we are well on the way to achieve that. We will continue to update the systems as we update post-launch. Okay, so I think that's pretty much about the end of the questions that they've answered. Not seeing any more. May sneak one or two more in. Okay, that's it. That's the last, very bottom of the post. So I just want to tell you thank you for making it this long. I know this was intense and this was a lot of information, but honestly I think it was worth it because there was a lot of things that we found out in this Dune Awakening Reddit AMA with the Funcom development team that answered a lot of the questions that we have been having. So thank you for watching my content. I really appreciate you being here. If you found this content entertaining or informative, or you liked it, or if you want more, think about subscribing. I have a milestone coming up that I'm trying to achieve of 5,000 subscribers, and I would love it, love it if you would help me to reach that goal. So thank you for watching my content. I'll see you in a video about Dune Awakening coming soon. Peace.